I just have to say, Shannon, every time I see your stock picture on your little Zoom square, it makes me feel happy.
All right, it's 5 o'clock.
Bonnie.
You're ready, Mayor.
Okay. I call the Des Moines City Council regular meeting for January 13th to order. I'm going to have Councilmember Steinmetz do the Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to do it a little differently today, so you're going to see it on your screen. Please follow along. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz.
Thank you.
City Clerk, do we have any correspondence? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'll get it right. Roll call. On the record, there are 6 of us in attendance. Councilmember Martinelli notified us about an hour ago that he was not feeling well and would not be attending. Is there a motion to excuse?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing 2, all those in favor of excusing, raise your right hand. I see 3. I see Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Oxiger, and Councilmember Harris. All those opposed? I see Councilmember Nutting and myself. Councilmember Martinelli is excused 4-2. City Clerk, is there any correspondence?
Mayor, we have no correspondence, no written public comment, but Barbara McMichael would like to give public comment at tonight's meeting, and she is in the meeting.
Okay, so she'll be giving it at the next meeting, as I heard you correctly?
Right now, she's here.
Right now?
Yes.
Okay, with that, Barbara McMichaels, you have the floor. I was looking for her on the screen.
Hello,
there you are.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Excellent. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Barbara McMichael. I am a Des Moines resident, 22810 Thunderbird Drive. And I am also here tonight representing SoCo Culture, which is the South King County Cultural Coalition. It represents a variety of cultural groups all throughout South King County. And one of the things, and I've talked to some of you before on the council, one of the things we're interested in is the cultural importance of trees to our communities. And we have, I know that Councilmember Buxton has added a tree to our crowdsourced map of culturally significant trees. Anybody is welcome to add a tree to that map. And it's just a chance to focus on a tree that's important to you in South King County and upload a photo and talk about why it's important. But tonight I'm talking about a particular opportunity that I know some in the city of Des Moines are already aware of. In building light rail, Kiewit Construction has pledged 1,000 free trees to the community every year. This is on top of the tree planting that they will do once the light rail is built. And I know that I have heard that the city of Des Moines has already accepted 100 trees out of 1,000 free trees that are available. These are to communities all along the Federal Way extension. I'm not sure where those are going specifically. I understand that some will be going to Kitty Park, which is great. I love the effort going on there. But I just wanted to make a plea to suggest that those trees, a lot of trees really need to go to where the communities most impacted are. I mean, that was the original kind of thought behind this giveaway program. So I wanted to encourage the council members, and I'm happy to help in whatever way to find out what the plans are for those 100 trees. And I have contacted Lizzie Buckle today. She's the lady who's coordinating this tree giveaway program. And she says there are 300 more trees that are available. So this would be a great chance for us to improve the tree canopy of Des Moines. And I just think it's something we should jump on. And I know the trees, they can deliver the trees to us, I believe, at this point. We have to put in the ask by the end of January. So If you have any questions, ignore that phone in the distance, but I'm happy to answer them or talk with you later on offline. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. McMichael. Appreciate your time. With that, we will move on to the city manager's report. And Michael, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Today, just brief city manager's report. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Merges to introduce an update on the bulkhead renovation. So with that, Andrew.
Yeah, good evening, City Council and Mayor. I'm actually going to have Kai Lee, the project manager, present tonight for an update on the bulkhead and be able to answer any questions that may come up. And Bonnie, do you have Kai's presentation?
Yeah, can I share my screen? This is Kai here.
You can, yes, Kai, thank you.
Okay, yep. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay, yep, thanks, Andrew. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a project update for the North Marina parking lot bulkhead and restroom replacement project. To get started, I would like to provide just a quick refresh on the project background. The existing timber bulkhead for the north lot was constructed back in 1979, and we have engineering study that show that the timber elements of the bulkhead has shown signs of structural deficiencies and failure, which necessitate the rebuild for the entire bulkhead. And originally, the project was split into two different phases because of budget constraints. However, with the legislative support, the city is currently under contract with Morrison Construction to rebuild the entire bulkhead, the public restroom, and the breakwater. So that is, both phases. Since the previous project update that Andrew provided to council back in October of last year, the contractor has made very good progress on the project. They have removed the existing timber breakwater, part of the timber bulkhead, and the riprap, which is the provided scour protection around the bulkhead. And they also remove some of the material behind the existing bulkhead to make room for the new sheet pile. And they also completed installation of all of the permanent tieback ground anchor. And now all of the steel sheet pile for the breakwater, the south wall, and the west wall are now in place. And I have some photo here to demonstrate some of the work that has completed by the contractor. The top left photo right here is showing that excavated bench behind the existing bulkhead to make room for the new sheet pile. The center photo shows the crew member installing tieback plate anchor. The third photo right here showing all of the steel sheet pile for the breakwater are now in place with the form work installed on top of it to get ready for the contractor to pour the concrete cap. The bottom left photo right here showing pile driving activity along the south wall. And the fifth photo right here, which I just took yesterday, it's showing that all of the piles are now in place along the west wall, and I believe the contractor has made their way around that corner today to continue along the north wall. So that's is where we currently at. So for the upcoming construction schedule, right now the construction team and the project teams are really up against the upcoming in-water fish window, which just ends in February 15th. That combined with unpredicted unpredictable weather patterns that we've seen in the past few weeks, and very unfavorable tidal schedule throughout the entire winter season. So those factors has created significant challenges for us. But with the ultimate protective of the project team is to try to complete everything within this first fish window to lessen the overall impact to the public. We've authorized the contractor to work 2 crews double shift in the next 5 weeks. So from now until the February 15 deadline, the day crew will work the normal contracted hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They will continue with pile driving activity along the north wall, trying to finish that. And the night crew will go from 7 p.m. To midnight. And all they are going to do is just only revetment activity, such as they're going to remove the remaining timber bulkhead material and some of the riprap, and they will take advantage of a low tide window to install a new scour protection rock along the bulkhead. And so, yeah, just want to make it clear, from 7 p.m. to 12 p.m., there will be no pile driving activity. There will be no truck hauling material in and out of the construction site. And the contractor will try their best to limit the construction noise and light leak onto adjacent properties, private properties. And I just want to make a public comments that the having Morrison Construction as a prime contractor on the project has been very good for us. The contractor is very collaborative, and they are as motivated as the city project team to complete everything within the window. And they are very sensitive and aware of the overall construction impact to adjacent property owners. So they trying their best to provide advance notice, mitigate any of the concerns and impact. So far, yeah, it's been very pleasant to work with. Yeah, with that, I would like to conclude my my report.
Council with questions. I'll start with Councilmember Nutting.
Kylie, thank you for the update. That's incredible. I just have one quick question. Do you foresee that the Teamsters strike with the inability to get concrete, lean mix, or anything like that is going to impact the next 5 weeks since they haven't come to the table yet?
Hey, Kai, I'll take that one. And great question. Yes, as most people probably know, that there is a Teamsters strike with a couple of concrete vendors right now in the area. The contractor's working with a couple other suppliers outside of the immediate area to bring concrete in. But fortunately, with the in-water work in the fish window, the fish window doesn't cover the concrete work. So we're okay if the concrete work is after the fish window. So right now, our primary goal is sheet pile installation, revetment installation, and removal of the existing bulkhead. So far, even with a little bit of delays with concrete, we're looking okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you. This was very nice to hear ahead of time, so that we will be sure to be able to have a great answer for people if they have questions. I'm wondering if we'll have like a little press release or something that might be able to go out and begin with, the great explanation that we had tonight about, the challenges that we're facing and why we want to accelerate this to beat the fish window, things like that, just to help out in the community. I know that people do watch this council meeting, but there will be people, I think, that will be writing in or asking. Do we know if we have a plan for that?
Yeah, and on that note, we do send out letters to all the homeowners within X amount of feet of the construction site routinely, so they know exactly the impacts, as well as the project team does a really good job coordinating with Bonnie to do any type of public noticing or just updates as needed where the public's going to be impacted. Especially like when the fishing pier is closed and things where people would use that at night. We try to give as much advance warning as we can on those.
Thank you so much. Great. That's good news. Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to add to that if I may.
Yes, please, Michael.
I think one thing to keep in mind, and it was sort of the foresight of the council at the time, that we were in a position to finance the entire bulkhead renovation at one time. And if it hadn't been for the fact that we received support from the state, we received a significant savings from the issuance of bonds because of our bond rating, and because we had sufficient cash on hand for a capital project, we were able to do the whole thing at one time. So on February 15th, hopefully, any late night activity will no longer be necessary. If we had, as we originally thought, the need to divide the project into two parts, that would have been kind of an ongoing nuisance. So I think that we need to keep in mind, that we were fortunate and good planning paid off, and the circumstances came together, and we had the support of our legislators financially, that we're able to do this all at once. So I think that's a benefit to the community and something to the council be reminded of. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Councilmember Harris, you had questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, three, hopefully really quick. Kai, where is the old creosote, the hazmat? Do you know where it goes? Where it's taken?
Yeah, so the creosote timber piles are so after the contractor remove them, there's like a certain certified location that they have to like dispose them. So they are disposed per the environmental requirement.
Yeah, I mean, is it like Arlington, Oregon? Is it, I mean, do you just out of curiosity?
Yeah.
Yeah, off the top of my head, council member, I don't know the exact location of that.
Okay, all right. Second, is the entire wall that epoxy coated? It's like all the same construction, right? I mean, all the way around?
Yes.
Okay, with the little electrode thing, and so is that required? Like, or
I think you're talking about probably cathodic protection, and that is actually part of the coating that's on the steel wall itself. So the steel wall is designed thick enough with the coating on it to where an elaborate cathodic protection system wasn't needed in this case.
Cool. Okay, so, and just hypothetically, I assume confidence is high that you're going to make that the 15th, but is it possible that, you 2 weeks to go or whatever, things start to slip? Is there any, is there anything you could do basically to make the deadline that would involve making more noise? I'm just, that would require permission. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, that's a great question. It's kind of like more effort you put into it. Can we accelerate the work? Yes. And the answer is we've kind of maxed out what we can do currently based on the regulations or the conditions in our permits. So the environmental permits only allow us to do, say, X amount of hours of work or X amount of hammer blows for a pile per day. So we're pretty constrained. What will happen though is if conditions arise, like environmentally, things like that, in which I need to go back to the federal government and ask for an extension of time, that possibility does exist. It's not guaranteed, but if we get into that situation, I'll try to extend that February 15th deadline if we have to.
Okay, I'm not trying to borrow trouble. I was just thinking of our meeting schedule, and if there was anything that we might have to, the council would have to vote on in order to just basically get her done.
Yeah, no, I think the contractor and the project team in general, the contractor really stepped up to the plate on this one and brought out a second crew with their subs and they're as motivated as we are to try to get it done. So they're, I don't want to tell them to get a third crew out there, but
No,
on their own will, they brought out a second crew, which is phenomenal to get this finished.
Indeed. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Are there any other questions? I would just add that our residents, I would say, short-term pain for a long-term gain. This is going to be a great asset to our community, and kudos to the city staff and their coordination with this construction company to get this done this year. So thank you. All right. Give the floor back to you, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. That concludes the city manager report for this evening.
All right, thank you. With that, we come to the consent calendar. Bonnie, would you read the consent calendar for us, please?
Yes. Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, approval of minutes. And item 3, acceptance of Office of Justice Programs, Des Moines Municipal Court, DUI Court. And that concludes the consent calendar, Mayor.
Councilmember Nutting?
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Buxton. Are there any council members that wish to remove an item? Seeing none, we'll now vote on the consent agenda. All in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
I see Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Nutting, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Oxiger, and Councilmember Harris, and myself. Vote passes obviously 6-0. So now we're moving on to new business. Is there any council members that would like to provide a recommendation for new business? Okay, I'll start with the first one I see, which is Councilmember Steinmetz. You're still on mute. Okay, there you are.
It took me a while to find my mouse to unmute it. Yes, I would like to propose that we have a discussion. I don't have specific recommendations or a motion at this point, but we have a discussion over the city's website, talking about where we want this website to go. Do we want it? Are we trying to make it an informational website? Are we trying to make it a promotional website? Really discuss sort of what the policy is behind one or the other. And, share kind of information that we want to see available on that website. Because I think a lot of people are looking for information and it's difficult to understand. And I think that we need some input from the city about what kind of information should be up there and are there any implications to that when putting construction schedules or things like that on that perhaps those of us who are on the council aren't particularly aware of. Excuse me. And then lastly, making sure that we have something that is functional, and I'd like to hear more information about who's in charge of the website, what are they doing to keep it updated, and is there any can we get a better design, frankly, because I don't think that most people are satisfied with it.
Okay, so not being that we would be moving this item to a future meeting, do we have 3 council members that support this? Please raise your right hand if you do.
Well, may I make a comment?
Councilmember Harris, typically this wouldn't be the comment portion. It would be to remand it to a meeting when we would make comments.
I beg your pardon, Mayor. It's just that I wanted to be a little more specific about what Councilmember Steinmetz was asking. Just
that clarification of his information. Yes, please go ahead and ask your question.
So we do have a study session scheduled for the 3rd of somewhere in February, I think. Would it be amenable simply to block out some, a certain portion of that for this discussion or not?
I'm going to defer to the city manager on that question.
Councilmember Harris, for you and I to agree it's so early in the year, and it happens so rarely. But in this instance, I do agree. I think that what we're hoping to work with the council, the mayor, deputy mayor, is to establish a goal-setting retreat with the council on February 3rd. And I think that this would be a perfect discussion for that venue. So, Mayor, I mean, our staff, we would support that discussion.
Okay. So all those in favor of Mr. Steinmetz' new business moving to the February 3rd meeting, please raise your right hand. Seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of us, that we'll get that set up on that agenda. So moving to the next person, and apologies, Councilmember Harris, I'm moving in order. Deputy Mayor Buxton was the next one I saw.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is in regard to considering our proclamations for the year. And for example, this month is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Next month will be Black History Month. Then comes Women's History Month, Sexual Assault Awareness, etc. So I would like to propose that we create a list of the celebrations that we usually commemorate and place it on a future agenda for review and possible authorization to be automatically add these proclamations to futures every year, so that somebody doesn't need to think about it. It's just these, if it's something that we do or have been doing every year, so that it becomes easy, kind of automatic. That's my proposal, is to have a discussion with a proposed list of things that we all agree we want to do every year.
Thank you. City Manager Mathias, do you have any comments on that?
No, I mean, I think that's fine. I think that council taking up proclamations as the time frame, proceeds is fine as well. We can do it either way. We'll be happy to put together a list of what we currently do.
And I went through all of our consent calendars for last year and created a quick list. If I can send that to you, Bonnie, if you want. So,
quick clarification, if I may, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Nutting. No, I'm just what I envisioned when you started speaking was basically that on the futures report, it would basically have, at each month, the proclamations we've already declared, for example, Juneteenth and LGBTQ and so on, they'd be just there so we could acknowledge them every year. Is that the sense of what you were trying to get at, or?
Right, they would already just be there. We wouldn't have to, and so they would just automatically appear in the consent calendar without somebody thinking about it. We have proclamations that we've already written for these things that we do every year.
Yeah.
And then that way we can see, if I go to futures today, I can see when exactly that the Domestic Violence Initiative proclamation is. Oh, that's in October, like that.
Right.
And then and then that segues to a second question that's tied to this, but I want to leave this as its own request to begin with.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Buxton. Councilmember Nutting, you had your hand raised. Was there a comment or question or clarification you wanted to make?
There's a question, clarification. So are you asking that they're not on the consent agenda, so they're not read into record when they're voted upon? They just automatically go. And I understand there's a lot of them that we always vote for, but the whole point of these proclamations is that they're read into record on the date that we vote on them. So there's a continuing way to go about this. I understand the futures part of it, that you want to see them on the calendar, and that's fine, but I am not in favor of pulling them from the consent calendar and not having them read into record on the dates that they're voted on.
I fully agree with you, Councilmember Nutting. That was not my intent. I think that the proclamation should still be addressed and read in their proper time. For example, last year we proclaimed Human Trafficking Awareness Month in the month of January. And we're not going to have another meeting now until the 27th, and it's not on consent yet. So, that would be something to even, I guess, see if we can get that on the agenda for the 27th. And then comes Black History Month and Women's History Month. So I just want to be sure that each of these things that we think are important are actually addressed in a timely fashion. We, every once in a while, do something in retrospect. And I still think the proclamation is important, even in retrospect, but it would be nice to always have these at the first of the month, be prepared for them. Does that make sense?
Okay. It makes sense now to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I'm for that then.
Yeah. All right. So to sum up your request, Councilman or Deputy Mayor Buxton, would be that basically we just make sure these dates are on the futures agenda, and inevitably they will move to whichever consent agenda and be read into the record. But it's more of a reminder and keep it out there so we know it's coming. So do I have at least 3 council members that are for this? So we've got, I see enough for that. By the way, I'm not counting on this particular area. We just need the 3 people that support it, and then it makes it to a future action. All right. And then I think you have another one, Deputy Mayor Buxton, but I'm going to go to Councilmember Harris first, and then I'll come back to you. All right. Councilmember Harris.
I actually have 2. So since we're going, so the first is I just want to see if there's any direction necessary on Barbara McMichael's tree request. It sounds like, they have these added trees, and, it would be good if the administration could just look into, they're free trees, and we can hold them and figure out how to plant them later on. There are several, groups that would be happy to. We don't have to decide where they need to go today. It sounds like they'll, give us the trees and we can figure it out.
All right, I'm going to defer to Councilmember or City Manager Matthias for demoting you. Look at that.
Yeah, we'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
We can let council know what the outcome of that inquiry is.
All right, I'm going to move back to Deputy Mayor Buxton for her next request of new business.
So this is tied in with the proclamation that I'm anticipating that we will approve for March, Women's History Month. And I was made aware by a combination of our legislative advocate and city manager that there's a possibility the legislature is considering creating a state holiday in honor of women's suffrage, probably March 22nd-ish. If that passes, I would like to honor that, acknowledge it in our proclamation. So if we do honor Women's History Month, I would like to incorporate the acknowledgement of this new legislation. So that would mean that we would want to address this particular proclamation probably before like the first week in March or the last week in February. So go ahead.
Yeah, so Deputy Mayor Buxton, just for clarification, this is if the legislation passes.
Correct.
This Women's Suffragette Day, I'm not sure what it's called, then we would add it to the proclamation. If not, we would probably do it in the following year. Is that what you're suggesting?
If it doesn't pass, then it doesn't become part of the proclamation. We already have a proclamation that we read every year for this. So yes. What I'm saying is just to give the council time to review how we want to amend that proclamation in time for it.
Yeah, I've no issue with the content. It was more the timing. We may be approving the proclamation prior to the legislative session ending is what my concern was. And that would obviously, we wouldn't be able to put it in.
Yeah, well, you know, and I checked with Anthony about that chances are if the legislature is extended past the 60 days, this is something that will already be kind of done or not done by that. This won't be something that is part of what happens if the legislature is their session is extended.
Okay.
So anyway, but looks like
Councilmember
also
Harris,
city manager had something he wanted to say about
okay.
that.
So I'll get back to you, Councilmember Harris. I'm turning it over to City Manager Matthias for a clarification.
Thank you. When I first heard about this, it's not exactly clear, but it sounds like it's being heard by a committee who we were trying to identify. And it seemed like an opportunity for the city to be proactive in supporting historical events that are very significant. And I mentioned it to Councilmember Buxton. I talked to Mr. Hempstead, and my thinking about this was just simply that if we find out a little more of the details in which committee's hearing this and so forth, council could decide to pass a proclamation in support of it. And that support could go on the record for this committee. I think it's being considered for March. The date would be March 22nd, which is in March 22nd, 1920, was when the Washington legislature approved the amendment giving women the vote in the United States. So this would be a historical date, and it would be a voluntary, kind of approval to create a holiday or not. Individual cities and companies, banks, everything would have their choice as to whether to honor that with a holiday or in whatever manner. But it seemed like we could be proactive in supporting something like that, because it seemed it would go in with, the proclamation for Women's History Month and for other things that the city tries to do. So that was kind of the basis of suggesting it. And I think what we can do is just expect more information from Mr. Hempstead, especially as we go into February, and see where we are, and does it make sense for the council to take an action. So I appreciate Councilmember Buxton following up on that.
All right, thank you, Michael. Councilmember Harris, you had a point for clarification?
Well, I was actually going to ask Councilmember Buxton a favor. I have not even looked at the draft legislation, and what you're saying, like, solid 100%, but I just really have a tough time voting for anything where I haven't even seen, even just the thing in writing.
Well,
so I was going to ask if you
House,
in this particular
1485.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying if you could, bring this back on the 27th, or just give me a chance to read it on, but that was my only thing.
For Councilmember Harris, for clarification, all we're doing today is putting it on for future support. Is we're acknowledging in the new business that yes, we do consider it. So some of your points in reading the thing, it would be open to discussion for a later point. But at this initial time, we're just looking for 3 people to support it. So if I could have hands of those to support it, would be great. Seeing 4, that's good enough to get it on to a future agenda for that discussion. And so then turning it back over, Councilmember Harris, you had another new order of new business.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would like to schedule an item on a future agenda to update our rules of procedure. It's been over 2 years, and it's time. Several.
Yes, Councilmember Harris, just so you know, the city manager and I have spoke about that, and I agree with you. We're targeting probably in the April timeframe, but I'm going to let him say if that's if he thinks the staff can do it and so forth. But absolutely agree, and I support that. Anyway, Council.
I sort of have a follow-on to this.
Okay, so go ahead.
A 1B. I would like to block out about, I don't know, no more than 10 minutes of that study session to outline the format of that meeting. The rules of procedure discussion is going to be lengthy and in the weeds, and it would just be nice to have some sort of idea of, okay, how this meeting is going to go. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, yes. You basically want to know what the rules of engagement are.
Indeed, Mayor.
Yes, I get it. Well, I think that comes to where my responsibility, at least to give a heads up of what that would be. I would try to give some kind of outline when we do have that meeting. And then you're right, we could discuss those rules in the beginning.
Mhm.
And
So I just want there to be agreement that at that study session, we're gonna, we're gonna block out a little bit of time for that rules of the road bit.
So having that said, I'm not going to put a date on it today. But I will work with the city manager and city staff on getting a future date to review the council rules. And they will include some form of rules of engagement. I'll use, for a lack of a better word right now, of how we will go through that process.
Okay, but that'll be a separate meeting. You know what I mean? In other words, the engagement meeting will be a real short thing, and then the actual.
The engagement would be the first part when I review the guidelines and the outline of the meeting.
Yeah.
We'll get clarifications on the points,
Okay.
and then we'll go into the meeting. And yes, we would like to make it quick.
Thank you.
City Manager Matthias, you had your hand raised.
Just a brief comment. We support the council and anything you want to do in that regard. I think in terms of staff time, it may require some inputs from our city attorney. But generally speaking, I just want to say that is a council process. We will support that process, but we really have no particular role or outcome that we're looking for in that process, just to be clear.
So to clarify, in a date in the we'll all say near future, we'll be set. We'll have the rules of engagement, and we'll have the city council rules, and we'll set it up for a study session. We have support of 3 council members. Please raise your hand. Seeing 6, it's no problem. All right. I also have one order of new business, and that is phones for council members. So a few years ago, we visited AWC, and they were talking about public records requests and so forth, and the complication of council members using their personal phones for city business. And it's becoming more and more apparent that it's better to separate the two. I worked with the city clerk, Bonnie Wilkins, and we approximate the cost annually to be about $4,500 a year for 7 council members and phone service. Is there any interest in this going forward? From what I understand, we could actually vote on this today and put it into effect. I know, Councilmember Oxiger, you got your own phone, and there's a question of how we might handle that type of situation. But I think for the most part, the other 6 of us have not done anything like that. So real quick on Councilmember Oxiger's situation, Bonnie, do you have any input or what we might do to resolve that situation?
It perhaps could just be the stipend of the $50 a month that we would pay for that phone.
As a separate action.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Steinmetz, you had your hand raised. You're muted.
I know. I was just trying to find it. So, yeah, there is a case that involved the Pierce County prosecutor where a few years ago when I was practicing down there, where the phones that were issued were being used for personal items. And he tried to argue that because they were personal in nature, you couldn't actually use them, or that couldn't be discovered in a lawsuit and wasn't subject to public disclosure, and he lost badly on that. Now, this is sort of the reverse situation. If we're trying to use personal phones, I think what you're doing is you're exposing everything that is on your phone, your personal phone, to public disclosure. And so if somebody wanted to find out all the phone calls that Deputy Mayor Buxton was making, all they'd have to do is make a public disclosure request. And if she was doing anything that had to do with city business, all of a sudden, all of what was on her phone might be exposed to a public disclosure request. I think this is the only thing that makes sense, is to just completely have a wall between that. And the best way to do that is for you to have a council phone, for each and every one of us to have a council phone so that it's protected. And we're not turning over our private lives to public disclosure requests. And there's really no reason that we could or should. What is important is what the city's doing, and that's what the public would be entitled to get.
Councilmember Harris.
Excellent idea.
Yeah,
So-
Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, so, sorry, I'm, learning all about reactions and all that. I guess the first thing is, the other cities have the phones, and is there any legal distinction between Councilmember Oxiger reimbursing him versus, security wise or whatever? I'm not, I got a separate phone just for this purpose. And I'm just trying to find out if there's any legality about reimbursement versus a city issued device.
Then I'd turn that over to our city attorney, Tim George.
I'm not really clear on what Councilmember Oxiger has at the moment. This is the first I'm hearing of this, but
So,
I mean,
yeah.
the city has a policy about reimbursement. Some staff use their personal phones for city business and get reimbursed. So we have you sign an agreement that essentially requires, the city access to that phone for public records purposes. So, if we went that route, we'd have to look at the form. We'd have to look into specifically, what the council member has acquired, but it's a possibility.
Okay. And then secondly, thank you. The other thing is, if it saves any money, I've literally never used my city issued computer. And so basically I would say whatever money, I don't know, I just want to poll my colleagues. Do any of you use your computers anymore? And if not, then, whatever funds we use for that depreciation, just put it towards the phones. Yeah, that's my only comment.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. Absolutely.
I think as far as I know, we all use our city issued computers.
Okay.
But I would say this, I think that before I call a vote, and I'm good, if council supports me, I would move this to next agenda, because I think we need a couple clarifications on the stipend paid, programs and what those policies are. If the city attorney could send us what the contract looks like so everybody could read that, I think that would be a good idea. So it sounds like Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Oxiger both have phones that you've used for city purpose. Would you sign that? Would you sign that document is my question.
No, Mayor, if I may, no, I would basically just turn in the phone. I mean,
Okay.
I would just use the whole point is I just didn't want to vote for something without Councilmember Oxiger understanding what, basically what he was getting himself into,
Yes. So with 3 council member support, we'll put this on the next agenda for a vote. And in that, between that time, we'll get provided that information. So we're all aware of that disclosure agreement. So
No.
seeing 3 hands or more, 4, 5, 6, we're good to go. Thank you, council. I knew there was going to be a few new orders of business on our first kind of full meeting. So appreciate your cooperation, your civility, and the ability to work together. With that, we're going to move to the board and committee reports. Now, before we start, we're going to add a little bit of an element. Due to the fact that we're in Zoom and we'll probably be in Zoom for some time, the city clerk and myself got together. And you get 4 minutes for your you get your board and committee report. You get 4 minutes for your board and committee reports. It's a mouthful, folks. It's a mouthful. But the idea is at 3 minutes, she will hold up a yellow card. And at the 4 minutes, she'll hold up a red card. And it's not soccer, folks, but it's an easier way for us. So I don't have to interrupt. But the idea is that we agree that once you hit the red card, wrap your thoughts up very quickly, and then I don't have to intervene. So with that being said, I'm going to start with Council Member Steinmetz, since he did the Pledge of Allegiance, and you have the floor, sir.
And now I had to unmute again, but at least I knew where that was. I don't have a whole lot to report this week, but there is one thing that I did neglect when I was talking about the website. I do need to give credit where credit is due. And a lot of this suggestion flows from a conversation I had with Councilmember Oxinger, and he had a lot of the ideas that I was bringing forth. So I just want to understand that this is not a single thing coming from me, but rather it's also a concern, and there was a corroboration really between myself and Councilmember Oxinger. So thank you very much for that. I didn't mean not to give you any credit for it, and you should have full credit for that. Otherwise, there haven't been any committee meetings yet, and so I don't have anything to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz. Next will be Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing at this time.
Thank you, sir. And then moving on to Councilmember Oxinger.
Yes, I basically have nothing at this time either, other than to say thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz, but I also have to credit, I've had conversations with during the campaign and since with other council members who have also expressed interest in reviewing the website. So including Councilmember Buxton and Councilmember Harris. So yeah, I think this is a group thing here. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Normally on the consent agenda, item number 3, I would have pulled it and had been all over it with any number of questions, but basically, it's worth a reminder to the public all the time that, we spend generally about half of our general fund every year on public safety and various related things. And the way that we handle these kinds of interventions, mental health things, people have various issues, is changing. And I have trust in Judge Leone, and I'm rooting for it. Regarding the website, I view the website as our digital presence, and I would like my colleagues to think about everything being the phone. People of our age, frankly, we think of the world through the desktop, but our residents view the world through the phone. And how can we engage with them via their phones for all kinds of stuff? We've gotten comments about see, click, fix. And how about that? Our vendor already provides that. So, that's the way the world is going. I very much am happy with Councilmember Buxton's concept. I'm not exactly sure how it works out, but the idea of persistence appeals to me greatly. If you proclaim a particular event of significance, the city must make an effort to acknowledge it in perpetuity. Every year you've got to, have that marker. If you only do it once, or every 8 years or something like that, it doesn't show the value. And finally, thank you to Barbara McMichael again for bringing up the tree idea. That appeals to me, something about basically having all of these trees and having a couple of months or whatever to figure out what to do with them. that's a great problem to have. And I sure hope we can make it work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Moving on to Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I would like to begin with honoring precious community member Ray Clark, who passed away on December 25th. He was very involved up at the Activity Senior Center. So I wanted to give a little history about him and what he's done. He moved to Des Moines in 1989 and started volunteering his time right away at the Activity Center. His passion was traveling and his rose garden. He was in the Navy for 25 years. 20 of those years was on a submarine. He loved the water. He was the driver for our senior trips. He was the Meals on Wheels driver. He helped with setup and take day at the center for special events. He helped during the lunch program, and he was the best Santa ever for the senior center and for Santa's breakfast. So his last event with us was playing Santa on April Fool's Day. What? I think that's a pretty clever joke. He passed out Easter eggs to our seniors while the Easter Bunny passed out candy canes. So we like to keep our seniors on their toes. Ray was full of heart, always giving a warm smile to all, and he'll be greatly missed. And he passed away on what is most likely his favorite day of the year. So I would like to ask, in honor of Ray, if we would like to send some flowers to the family. We do have an address and a place to send out of our Hearts and Minds Fund.
So with that, all those in favor of making a donation to the Flowers for the Hearts and Minds Fund, raise your hand. I think, okay, yeah, Jean, I see yours now, 6-0. So let's go ahead and do that. And back to you, Councilmember Buxton.
Thank
Deputy
you.
Mayor Buxton.
Thank you. So I wanted to give a little report out on a board I'm involved in, South King Housing and Homelessness Partners, and the short for that is SKIP. So I'm going to use that as I move forward here. I want to report on something that's a little bit secure but hard-fought advocacy with regard to safety for our region. So most government and quasi-government organizations in our region send letters to our legislature requesting types of legislation they feel is important. And we did that as a council recently. It's called our legislative priorities, and SKIP does the same. One request on SKIP's draft to the legislature was, quote, support state policies that address discrimination against renters based on prior criminal record. So to me, I see the compassion behind that statement, but I also had some red flags. So I advocated that this specific statement, the way it was worded, be eliminated from the draft for these reasons. Our cities have the freedom to create code that accomplishes the exact same thing. Each city could do that if they wanted. Only one of our 10 South County partner cities had made it a priority to enact a similar code. So I didn't feel like it was appropriate to represent all 10 cities in Olympia when only one has done this. It wasn't clear. Another reason it wasn't clear about the type of law that may come from this type of encouragement. So there was concern if the outcome turned out to be an inability to screen potential tenants for criminal history. That just wasn't clear to me. And the last reason was because since there was no particular bill mentioned, it was inappropriate to advocate for this priority. So there was robust conversation in the board over this item, and I was successful in the elimination of this particular statement. But also what I did is include as a replacement additional language that advocated for housing stability and protected not only tenants, but landlords as well. So why was this important? Because safety is a chief concern of our citizens, and there are many ways of addressing it besides law enforcement, and this was one of them. So I just wanted to bring this up as an example of how we, members of your council, are advocating regionally and successfully behind the scenes in these obscure ways on behalf of citizens. And this was a safety issue. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Buxton.
And you know what? I'm sorry, I can't see Bonnie. So
okay,
if she had that color for me, I wasn't able to see it.
Okay.
It was red. Okay. Okay, so maybe we'll have to,
It's going to be a
Yeah.
process we'll have to perfect. Part of it is just to be able to move the meeting along expeditiously. Something I learned in my wife's Toastmaster meetings that was very effective on time. So we'll strive for now, and we'll perfect as we go. I also, because of last week's meeting being a little different than the norm, one thing that the city council has not acknowledged is the passing of Jack Main. Councilmember Oxiger will definitely acknowledge a man after his own heart who was a journalist. At one point, he was the editor, I believe, of the Arizona Republic, and he was in the Seattle PI as well, along with our Waterland blog as we came to know him in this town. As far as, I'm not sure what can be done as far as the Hearts and Minds Fund for him. I think it's kind of a wait and see thing unless the Bonnie has something as a suggestion. But I just definitely wanted to acknowledge his passing as well, as he was a contributor to the community as well. I got City Manager Matthias. Go ahead.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, I think back on dinners Mayor Pina, yourself, and myself had with Jack, and just a couple of things about Jack. He was grew up in as a child in Hong Kong, spent a lot of time in South Africa, was a member of the Washington Post for a period of time. Always the most delightful person to talk with. I love listening to Jack recount his history and his views of the world. And so I wanted to add that because that was he'd recently moved to Des Moines last couple of years, and just a great guy. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. That's why I wanted to acknowledge him. And then just finally, just for the residents of the city and my fellow council members and staff, as you could tell, I'm learning the ropes of being mayor, running a meeting. I'm always open to feedback, comments, and so forth. And I will get better. But I appreciate your patience. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Councilmember
moved.
Nutting.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Looks like I had Deputy Mayor Buxton. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Nutting, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Oxiger, Councilmember Harris, and myself, 6-0. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, January 27th at 5 p.m. You all have a great weekend, and